Hello, everyone, and hope everyone's doing well again. Once again, thank you for watching the video and or any of the videos. And feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And of course, let me know if you have any ideas or questions as we move forward too, or any thoughts, as always. So it's definitely appreciated. I wanted to talk about. I thought this was a really fascinating point that I learned while through some of my conversations. This didn't come up recently, actually. It came up quite several years ago, and I've been kind of seeking to understand the answer as we move forward. So I wanted to kind of summarize what I know so far as this question. So when it comes to Earth, and just considering our history and the fact that everything we do down here is based on the fact that we don't know what happens when we die. That forms our ideologies, our lifestyles, how we interact with each other. And I always wondered. This actually started several years ago, and it was a conversation I was having actually with Golda Meir, who was a great person. She was I think the prime minister, first female prime minister, perhaps the only one. I'll have to double check, but of Israel, the country of Israel, and just a fascinating story. And I talked to her, and she is very, very polite. And I remember asking her in particular. So this is kind of where the question began. Well, for example, the Jewish people and Arabs, Palestinians, for example, or Muslims, do they get along in the afterlife? Unlike here. And that's not. I'm not saying that's a broad, yes or no. Like they never get along. There's all sorts of examples throughout time too where they get along and don't. So, but it's one of those well-known, at least modern-day conflicts that has a very long historical context. And so I was curious, well, how does that work over there? And her answer was, for the most part. I had asked, does everyone get along in the afterlife? All things considered. And she had said, for the most part. And ever since then, I've always been wondering, well, that's interesting. I thought it was a great answer, and it's nice to hear that. But why? And that's actually kind of the reasons. And this applies to everybody from Earth. So I'd also asked just recently, because I needed some kind of context or cutoff point, because, humans, and there's different categories of humans, go back quite a ways on Earth too. So I was just tracking to the modern humans as we know ourselves, which I think go back about 10,000 BC roughly. There's all different sorts of categories that we evolved from and that interacted with each other. But as far as modern day Homo sapiens, I think us as a species go back about 10,000 BC, so about 12,000 years or so. So I just needed some kind of cutoff point in order to understand that. And the world population too, I was doing a little bit of research on that. So over the past 10,000 years or so, it's gone up exponentially. It was about 2 or 3 million. I did some research online, and I'd confirmed it's pretty overall accurate, our understanding of these numbers, at least over the past 10 to 12,000 years. So about 12,000 years ago, the world population for Homo sapiens at least only was about 2 to 3 million, and then it went up progressively, 4, 5, 6,000. I'm looking at the data now, and then we're talking about 7 to 9,000 years ago. All of a sudden, we're at 7 million. So it gradually goes up as the world, as this population of humans continues to grow and spread across the planet and that sort of thing. So now right around 2,000 years ago, we are right at about 200 million people. So about over the course of that 10,000 years, about 2 to 3 million people over 10,000 years expanded to roughly about 188 million people, so quite a bit. And it may not sound like a lot, and it's relative, but it's really not. So 3 million to 188 million people over 10,000 years, it's still a big increase. But if you look at the last 2,000 years, it went up exponentially much, much more. So up to about, so that number doubled over the course of 1,000 years. And then this brings us right up to 2022. So right back about 1,000 years, it's close to, it just about doubled. So it's about 300 million people, 350 million people roughly, I think. And up until about the 1900s, well, now we're in the billions. We hit the billions right around, let's see, 1800s is when we hit a billion. And now, here we are 200 years later, and now we are at the 8 billion mark. I think we hit it this year, the 8 billionth baby, excuse me, sorry, was born in 2023. So that's just amazing. And that's over the past 200 years. We went from a billion to 8 billion. So the reason I say all this is because there's the context. So about maybe 3 million people 12,000 years ago, and then over the course of time, it basically went up. And it gradually goes up and down and that sort of thing. But 8 billion people over 3 million people to 8 billion over about 12,000 years. It's just amazing. So that is the context for this conversation. And so whatever humanity and history and things like that happened within that time period is kind of covers the question that I'm asking. Okay, so that being said, if you really think about it, and all the problems we have today, even in the past, 1 to 200 years, even the last 100 years, with World War II, World War I even, it was 1915, I think, so about just over 100 years ago. There have been a lot of conflicts amongst countries. There still are today, and so many people, if you think about it, and here's the main reason why. So believe it or not, from what I understand, just over 90% of the people, the humans during this period, actually get along in the afterlife. That's a really powerful statement if you think about it. And if you take away the fact that we don't know how anything works. Remember, when we're born here, we don't know anything, and we are taught and we learn, and at a certain point, we try to understand how to live here, and how does that, or how does it not, relate to what happens after we die. And the point is, nobody knows for sure until we die, and it's explained to us. So if you can imagine, if everyone started out on an even foot, on even footing, and had the knowledge of how it works, and therefore there's no question. There's no question about our differences and how things work. There's no guesswork as far as religions go. There's no, is it this or is it that? And there's no disagreements, let alone violent disagreements or conquering or conquest. And there's no, all these things that are part of the human condition that drive us to separate from each other and find ourselves in conflict with each other for to one degree or another, are really irrelevant for the most part when we die and we realize, oh, okay, so this is how it works. This is it's basically humanity's attempt to understand how to. We're only alive for maybe a few decades, and how to try to use that limited time to have a life, basically, and how to how to interact with others, and for good or bad. So really, that's the underlying question of everything: is really, what is this, and where does it come from? And also, what happens when we die? And the great answer is, you know, and this is a big part of the reason for the answer too, is that this is evolution, and we were born here, and this is our first time at life. And so there's just a simple split between what's physical and what's not physical, but there's a process and to carry over physical life that evolves fairly into the afterlife. Everybody, doesn't matter who you are, for good or bad, because we are part of this process, and it's basically, us trying to figure it out here. Once we die and our souls are carried over, we're awoke, we're waking up, made whole, completely at peace. It's a completely objective and neutral and fair and positive experience for everyone. So if you just imagine, here's Earth and everybody trying to figure it out, and we just don't know. We just don't have that knowledge yet. So once everybody dies, now that's explained to them. So everyone is properly and finally kind of educated at that point. And in light of that, it's us understanding, well, there is no rules to getting into the afterlife. Everybody will die and simply carries over. Our souls are preserved and awaken in the afterlife, all equally. And then we're explained exactly, what this was and where we came from and everything. So all these ideas and differences and everything that, over the past 10 to 12,000 years, remember, that's my context just for now. So my timeline is just made obvious to everyone, so, and everything that we basically have known down here is no longer relevant. And people understand, had all of us been born in the afterlife, for example, and, in the spiritual realms instead of over here, we just happen to be born over here. Well, we would have that knowledge, and everything is equal and infinite and well understood over there. So all of our differences and wars and everything like that, religious differences and ideological differences, anything you name, that kind of cause any kind of conflict on any level, personal, one-on-one, up to group, societal, governments, world wars, everything. Just it really is. It's understood that we were only trying to do our best based on what we knew and what we were taught. So, and that's a large, overwhelming percentage, over 90%. And it makes sense if you think about it. And of course, it's not a perfect number because people, that remaining 10 or less percent is really, everybody's entitled to have their own, have their experience. And if something was done to them or their family or something like that, just because, you make it over there and understand how it works doesn't mean that everybody just automatically gets it and forgives everybody. There's some personal, individual and group tragedies that have occurred over time, and some things are just unforgivable to some people, no matter what. And of course, a lot of that actually falls into that realm. Not all of it, but a lot of it is really the darker sins of humanity. What we do, the worst of the worst that you can imagine that have happened to people. And there's just some things that are unforgivable. And I get that too, so, and that's completely understood. But as far as, for the most part, just overall, it's kind of a amazing testament to what the afterlife is, what this is, and what we're trying to do down here, and how really, people integrate that once they get over there. For the most part, it's people do get along. and it's just a great testament to what the afterlife is as well. Infinite everything, life, possibility, knowledge, health, anything that you want to attach to that. Some people wonder, will you get bored in being alive forever? It's up to you. Free will. Infinity has been harnessed and mastered over there, and we will be a part of that someday. You can get bored if you want to, or you could simply choose to feel infinite peace and joy and fun. Or if you want to, re-experience what we did on Earth, experience boredom for whatever reason, just to have the experience. As a learning or as for whatever reason, you can do that too. But remember, if you ever find yourself wondering what if this or what if this, which is totally natural because I do too. Like, don't you get bored, or does pain exist over there and that sort of thing? If you want it to, is the simple answer. Like, you can experience, if you want to go to war and understand what that feels like because you never joined the military, and you can die and experience that, but it's by choice. And you can experience sleep. You don't have to sleep. You're like, well, do you sleep? You can if you want to. So remember, all those what if kind of questions are immediately counterbalanced by, well, the other is possible too. It's free will. So you can choose whatever you want to over there. And that being said, in light of infinite time and possibility, it's kind of a cool idea. And so I wanted to share that because as far as how people on Earth react to one another when we get over there. So just especially being an American too, and I think this is partly why I explored the question over the past few years, is it's been a very divided country. So I built on that question after I talked to Golda a few years ago, and kind of sought to understood, well, why? Why is that the case? For the most part, it makes sense. It's not a perfect, 100%, but why? And what's the statistic for that sort of thing? And that's it. That is it. So, and that is the reasons why, and the kind of numbers surrounding that thing, that idea, the question, if you will, the 90% or more. So, that's it. That's all I wanted to kind of share about that. And hopefully you found it interesting. I did. I found it fascinating as always. And any thoughts or questions you have about that, of course, please let me know as always. And thank you again for watching, and hope you found this informative and interesting as usual. So thank you, and have a great whatever time it is you are, and we'll see you next time.